Well, next Tuesday is an election. You might have heard something about it.
Maybe.
And we'll kind of look at the numbers, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen because I think it is going to probably be a very close election. But again, like we talked about in our last couple of sessions, that polls are only a snapshot, and if you can't get a good response rate from people, you're not going to have very accurate results. So, because of changes in society, traditional ways of polling people are harder and harder to do. And early election results, like I say, it's hard to know just who exactly people are voting for. What's the numbers so far? That's what it comes down to. Who's voting? According to our friends at the University of Florida, total early votes so far, 62.7 million. 33 million in-person early votes. Mail ballots returned, 29.5 million. Those requested, 66.5 million. So about 45% of mail-in ballots have been returned. Well, let's compare that to some others here. Like I say, Georgia, about 5 million people voted in 2020. This year, so far, 3.4 million. I know they're going to be an important part of the race. I'm not excited about it. So about 2/3 of the people who voted in 2/3 of the total that voted in 2020 have already voted in 2024. Then at least 600,000 people that didn't vote in 2020 have already voted. And who those people voted for, that could determine the election in Georgia. Florida, about 11 million people voted in 2020. So far, 6.2 million, about 500,000 since yesterday. Very heavy turnout. So, yeah, just about half the number of people who voted 2020 have voted 2024. Michigan, about 5.4 million people voted in 2020. So far, about 2.3, almost 2.4 million. Wisconsin, a little slower, 1.2 million. But that's more than a quarter of a million since yesterday. 3.2 million voted in 2020. Arizona, 1.8 million, but about 3.3 million people voted in 2020. So got a lot of very heavy early turnout here. Save here. Again, just over half the number of people voted in 2020 have already voted. 1.4 million back in 20, 872,000 by today. And of course, you got a whole full weekend of early voting left to go too. Plus Friday, plus tomorrow. North Carolina, huge turnout. 5.6 million people voted 4 years ago. 3.6 million so far. Pennsylvania lagging a little bit, but 6.7 million people voted in 2020. About 1.6 million voted so far. A lot of people in those states, they're just election day voters. Tell from this, we really don't know. We know that women are outvoting men by a rate of about 10%, by about 55% to 45%. Usually it's about 51 to 49. Who they're voting for, they can take guesses, but we really don't know. We're not going to know until they finally break open those ballot boxes and start counting. So, compare this to 2020. We have 62 million votes so far. Now, 4 years ago, 101 million people voted early, out of 160 million total. Mail-in votes, about 65 million people voted by voted by mail. That's out of 92 million people who requested ballots. So just about a little more than two-thirds, about 70% of the people voted by mail returned their ballots 4 years ago. So far, it's just about 45%. But again, you got a whole full weekend left to go. As long as it's there by Tuesday, it's fine. Depending on the state, some might give you a couple extra days as long as it's postmarked by election day. There are 245.7 million eligible voters this year. Citizens over the age of 18 who are not otherwise banned from felony convictions in their states, 245.7 million. And of those, about 4.4 million are eligible overseas voters. There are 4 million Americans living abroad right now. They are eligible voters. This includes people just working outside the country on business, active duty soldiers serving abroad. Example of most Marines, they are stationed outside the United States. Diplomatic staff and so forth, people working for different federal departments, masters and so forth. So, we wait and see. And how many people are finally going to turn out? We don't know. This is a pretty impressive number for any election. But it's really only a fraction of who's actually going to vote. This may only be about 40% of who actually ends up voting. And 3 more days of early voting, 4 in some states. That number is going to go up dramatically. So maybe more than half of all voters in this election could vote early this year. What do we do with predictions? What to look for? 8 key counties. This is an Associated Press article here. Reuters, actually, excuse me. 8 counties that could decide the election. Cobb County, Georgia. It's a suburb, the Atlanta suburbs, just northwest of Atlanta. Solidly Republican for decades. Now it's diversified very quickly. It's now about 30% African American, 15% Latino, and about 6% Asian. And 16% of the residents of Cobb County are immigrants. And it's been jumping very strongly toward the Democrats. Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Again, a suburban county. Long been a Republican stronghold, but it's now trending very strongly toward the Democrats. 2012, Mitt Romney won there 67% of the vote. Trump won less than 60%. So if it's closer than that, or if Harris wins, then she probably wins the state of Wisconsin. Waukesha has 400,000 residents. Washoe County, Nevada. The bulk of the population of Nevada lives in Clark County. That's the Las Vegas area. Washoe County is in the western part of the state. This article explains there are 3 political zones in Nevada. It's sparsely populated rural areas, basically which is most of Nevada, except for the extreme western edge of it, and Clark County. This is Reno and Sparks. Reno calls itself the biggest little city in the world. Hillary Clinton won Nevada by 2.4%. Now, Nevada does tip. Their results have been within 3 percentage points in 4 of the past presidential elections. So Elections are very tight there. It's not very large in terms of population, but elections are close. 3/4 of Republican presidents live in Clark County. Have a senatorial election there. Washoe trending towards the Democrats. 2016, Tesla opened a electric motor gigafactory there. High-tech jobs have followed, luring more college-educated voters to the area. College-educated voters have been trending towards the Democrats. Polls show Trump gaining among Hispanic voters, about 20% of the electorate. But after that speech in New York, where that one guy made the comment about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage, that gain may not really happen. We'll see. Harris will have to match or even beat Biden's margin Washoe to win statewide. Wayne County. That is Detroit. Detroit was once the 5th largest city in the United States. The auto industry made in Detroit. But starting in the 60s, auto manufacturers started moving out of Detroit. Factories start shutting down. What happens to Detroit? Population disintegrates. But it's still by far the largest county in Michigan. It has 1.75 million residents. African Americans, about 38% of the population. Arab Americans, about 8%. Wayne County was won by Obama, 74% in 2008 to 68% for Biden. The Republicans making inroads with white working class voters who live in the western suburbs. Basically, union membership, and a lot of people don't belong to unions anymore, so a lot of union voters, they don't necessarily vote straight Democratic anymore. A lot of cultural issues, not necessarily economic issues. Douglas County, Nebraska. That's Omaha. Remember, Nebraska breaks up its electoral votes by congressional district. Maine does the same thing. In the last couple of elections, the Northern Rural District of Maine normally goes to Republicans, and the Omaha area goes to the Democrats. But Nebraska has voted Republican every presidential election since 1968. Last Democrat to carry Nebraska was Lyndon Johnson in 1964. But this one electoral vote here in this congressional district in Douglas County, Nebraska, could decide the president. That's since 1991. Second district has been trending very heavily towards Harris. The first district, which is the outer suburbs and Lincoln, state capital, it's more Republican, but it's the same media market. There's been a lot of signs of voters shifting towards Harris, but probably not enough to carry the first district. But the second district looks pretty strong. The third district is central and western Nebraska, all the farms and rural areas. The Republicans usually carry that by about 30 points. About 90% of the second district's residents live in Douglas County. About 600,000 people living in the Omaha area. Erie County, Pennsylvania. Erie County, that is the little county, a little bit of Pennsylvania that borders Lake Erie. Traditionally, a very industrial area, a lot of shipping, factories, and so forth. Kind of swing county. Pennsylvania may be where it all comes down to. By registration, Democrats have a 400,000 vote lead on voting. That's by registration. We don't know if these people are actually voting for Harris or Trump. And that's not counting the unaffiliated voters. Who are they voting for? We don't know. That's early voting. That's not counting election day. Southeastern Pennsylvania, that's the Philadelphia area, expected to go to Harris. Pittsburgh, just basically that one county, expected to go to Harris, but there are a couple of counties kind of in between. Harrisburg, which is the state capital, it's kind of a swing county. State College, Pennsylvania, where we have a Penn State, that's kind of a swing county, a lot of younger college voters, and Erie County. Erie County is like a microcosm of Pennsylvania as a whole. It's a Democratic city center, conservative rural areas, and ideologically mixed suburbs. It's kind of a bellwether county, having voted the same way as the state in every presidential election since 1992. It's basically to win Pennsylvania, you got to win Erie County. Only 25 counties nationwide have more than 3,143 boomerang from Obama to Trump to Biden between 2012 and 2020. And Erie is one of them. Harris with a narrow lead, the latest Suffolk University USA Today poll. It will. Maricopa County, Arizona. Phoenix area. 45,000 vote margin victory, making the first Democrat since Harry Truman to win the county, the first Democrat since Bill Clinton to win this entire state. But can Republicans flip it back? Don't know. War security is a big issue in Arizona, but there are also a lot of Hispanics in Arizona. Hispanics make up about 30% of the county's population. Caravas County, North Carolina. Voted Republican in every presidential election since 1948. Harry Truman won North Carolina that year. But in 2020, Biden became the first Democrat since 1976 to finish within single digits of his Republican rival there. Even better Carvas than Obama. The thing about North Carolina is that was actually the closest state in the Union last time. Trump carried that by just like less than a point. Obama won in 2008. Narrowly lost in 2012. I have a growing African American population, growing Asian Hispanic population, non-white voter registration surged in the last few years. But if Harris can win it or get close, she could carry the entire state. It's one way of looking at it. And of course, got predictions. Predictions, remember, they don't always work out well. This is the Scholastic poll from 2016. Kids voting, 135,000 kids voted across the country. Who do they expect to win the election 2016? Hillary Clinton by 52%, Trump with only 35%. Now, the problem with that one, coupon poll. 2, kids who are basically just listening to their parents. You have the phenomenon called the shy Trump voter, the Bradley effect. But why did Scholastic do this? Because they wanted because an election is an excellent opportunity to teach students about the election process in political science. Well, Nickelodeon, they have theirs, 35,000 kids. 52% of the vote for Harris, 48% for Trump, out of 32,000 kids, at a virtual poll from October 3rd to 23rd. And again, coupon poll. But is this what kids are hearing? They're hearing a close election. Was this a class project? Only in certain areas leaning one way or another? Don't know.
Where was it attached?
And Nickelodeon's Kids Pick the President.
Who did they direct you to?
Yeah, we don't know if it's just if Nickelodeon was just doing the commercials, telling kids vote for president, or the website.
Were they with pressure.
Yeah, or if it was a school project, we don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was like as a commercial. Because
Yeah.
that looked like a really good quote.
Yeah.
But you just voted on the site, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so we don't know. You game the system to vote more than once in a coupon, because you can do that in coupon polls. That's another problem with it.
Yeah, it's true.
Remember this funny old movie I saw, mid '80s, Real Genius. This guy decides to enter the Frito-Lay sweepstakes. So he decided, he needed some. He needed to improve his life a little bit, so he's going to try to win as many prizes as he could in the Frito-Lay sweepstakes. Like I said, no purchase. He kept saying, no purchase necessary. Enter as often as he wants. So what do? He got this machine to fill it out the 2 or 3 million forms of Frito-Lay sweepstakes. He ended up winning 32% of the prizes. Well, that's just a movie, but it just kind of shows the power of the coupon poll. Funny movie, I recommend it. The costume contest. Generally, people who, whatever costume is most popular among politicians and political types, that generally predicts the election, at least it has since 1980. But again, this year, why are people choosing who they choose? Like I said, this year it's Trump, or is it because they want to vote for him, or because they're making fun of him? What are they doing to the costume? Like I say, they put him in a prison outfit, or are they just walk around pretending to be him, or it's just Kamala Harris just not a funny costume?
Trump has more drastic features
Yeah.
that you could make fun of. You can't really make fun of
Also just generally funny.
Yeah.
Funny talks.
You can't really make fun of the drastic features.
It's more normal, acts more normal, less calm and quiet.
It's way more funny to
Yeah.
impersonate Trump.
Yeah, compare that to 1992 when you have characters like Bill Clinton and George Bush Sr. They were making fun of them for months, and you could make fun of with either one, Bush or Clinton, even Ross Perot, the third party candidate.
Who won that?
Yeah. What's that?
Did they do that?
Yeah, 1992 was.
Did they do that one for that? Did they do that for those?
Oh, I'm about to show you here Alan Lichtman is a historian, one of my colleagues, and he has something called the 13 Keys of the White House. And so he's done this every presidential election since 1984. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant the costume thing. Did they do the one costume thing?
Yeah. This year was Trump.
For
Bill Clinton and Bush Sr.
Yeah.
is Clinton. Bill Clinton. In 1980 was the Carter-Reagan election, and a lot of people making fun of them both ways. People just thought it was fun to dress up one way or another. Now here Reagan got it.
If you really want to see a good impersonation of Trump, though, you should watch the Shane Gillis impersonation. He's really good. He's a comedian that does a lot of good stand-up.
Okay. So, 13 keys to the White House. 13 things that sway an election, in Lichtman's opinion. I'd say some of it is kind of not always very cut and dry, open interpretation. Some of it is Monday morning quarterbacking. And he's been able to extrapolate this back to the elections back through history. But it's had a pretty good run so far. And here's what shows his keys to be. All right. So, party management. fact. Has the party gained seats in the U.S. House of Representatives compared to the previous election? And usually the incumbent party loses seats in the midterm election. That doesn't mean that party is not going to win overwhelmingly in the general election. No primary. Basically, the question is: the party united behind the candidate? And asking this of the incumbent party. Well, right, here we go.
That was gonna be some people who don't.
It's a party mandate. Democrats had lost seats in the 2022 election, so that turns false. A primary contest, true. Everyone pretty much was behind Biden, and when he dropped out, everyone quickly got behind Harris. Polls been showing that 96, 97% of Democrats behind Harris. So that is true. You got to win like most of these to be able to win the presidency. Incumbent seeking re-election? No. Usually the incumbency effect, that turns very strong. Voters tend to vote for who is in office. Biden drops out, so Democrats lose one. No third-party challenge. There are a lot of third parties running. The prohibition parties, maybe their big year for the breakthrough. But is a significant third party is a significant factor in this race? No. Not like Perot was in 92 or 96. Not like John Anderson was in 1980. Not like George Wallace in 1968. No. So there's no third party. Strong short-term economy. Economy's actually doing really well. Millions of jobs been created. Stock market's strong. Consumer confidence last report is very good. So unemployment is very low. The only problem was inflation, and by all measure, that's pretty much basically gone. But is that going to be enough to switch people back from the Democrats back to the Republicans? Memories of inflation a few months ago. That was good a little bit, but and part of inflation is a psychological effect. Give an example: gas prices. Are they high right now? Compared to this time last year, no. Actually lower than they were this time last year. Of course, we live in an area where the oil companies like to jack up the prices. They call it the freshness tax. Strong long-term economy, yeah, pretty good. Compared to the rest of the world, historically, it's still pretty good, but that's looking at the economic numbers. That's what do people think these numbers really are. No social unrest? Really, there isn't. There aren't a lot of protests in the streets. I got some people protesting over Gaza, but those are very small and very minor, very isolated. Crime nationwide is actually down. Lowest levels in decades. No scandals. But anything that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris did that was especially considered scandalous? No. Yeah, what Biden dropping out and his health, would that be considered a scandal? Again, kind of open to interpretation here. In terms of anything threatening impeachment or embarrassing him, either one of them, not really.
Most of the things that Trump does you could consider scandalous as well.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be bothering him at all.
No.
I mean,
As the rest of us, we'd be in prison by now.
Yep.
I hate to say this, but a lot of times Biden, when he talks, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, he was never a very good public speaker. He's always had that stutter, stammer that kind of bothered him, and plus,
Aside from
he
that, it's just
kind
like,
of,
just like,
yeah.
he gets bad words.
Yeah, he's like a lot of politicians. They like to talk and tell a story, and sometimes he gets kind of confused in the stories.
I think everybody's saying that it's just an age.
Or as you get older, you're up. Um, like I say, your power, your concentration starts getting more limited, no matter what kind of stage of health you are. But I know, but it's not always automatic. If you take care of yourself, you can have a very strong, sharp mind well into old age. I have a couple of people nearly 100 years old, and they're sharp as a tack, and they could remember everything they did 50, 60, 70 years ago, just like that. Why you live to be 100, because you're able to do that.
Yeah.
But no foreign or military failure. Well, Afghanistan pullout was a little rough. You kind of remember that. That could be a major factor. Um, Basically, would have had to keep fighting in there for a long, long time because there were much people were propping up the Taliban. But basically, those people are slaves now, especially women.
Yep. But it was better for us.
We got out of there, but Russians, basically that and Chernobyl broke them as a superpower. Britain had to leave in the late 1800s, more trouble was worth. Next person up, China. Are they going to get involved there, try to stabilize and prop up the Taliban? Who knows? They can barely keep their own country together. But we have to go back into Afghanistan one day? I don't know. Charismatic incumbent. Joe Biden had a lot of charisma. You know, he's likable, but that doesn't necessarily mean charismatic. And again, this is also kind of a very subjective question. Uncharismatic challenger. People really don't like Trump. Some people really like him, some people don't. But predicted winner here, Kamala Harris. Predicted winner 2020 was Biden. Predicted winner Trump, even though he won the electoral college, but Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Obama, Bush Sr. Predicted winner in 2000 was Al Gore, but again, that was one of those split elections. Gore won the popular vote, but lost the electoral college. The numbers said Gore should have won, but on this test, but Bush won. Clinton twice, Bush Sr., Ronald Reagan. Going back. But is this going to predict the election? Who knows? Turnouts. Turnout in U.S. presidential elections. Let's go to the early elections when 1832, when the popular vote started to matter more. You have basically called universal suffrage, or universal male suffrage. Basically, all men can vote. Is that?
Universal male suffrage.
Yeah, universal male suffrage is what historians call it. But even then, it wasn't universal. Basically, all white men could vote, regardless of whether they owned property or paid taxes. That's what they mean by universal.
I figured that he was like black suffrage.
Yeah, black suffrage. African Americans. There were some who could vote, voting in the North, 1840s and 1850s, and even portions of the South. Even there were some free blacks who were voting, but not very many. But by the 1830s, they couldn't vote even if they were free men. But African American suffrage doesn't start till after the Civil War.
Because when you like male suffrage, like, but whites couldn't vote.
Yeah, but while it was legal for African Americans to vote, you had all those disfranchisement measures trying to keep African Americans voting. They were in place from like the 1880s till the 1960s. And women can't vote nationwide until 1920. They can vote in some localities, 1880, late 1800s. Turnout. Highest turnout ever was 81%. This is the William Henry Harrison election, 1840. And he had quite a bit, very strong early voting here, turnout here in up to the early up to the late 1800s. Generally about easily always about 70%. We have a sharp drop off here after the election of McKinley in 1896. It was down to about 70% by 1900. McKinley's re-election down to about 65% by 1904. And after World War I, it drops even further. We just fought a war to make the world safe for democracy, but turnout's just about 55% in the 1920 election. Remains that kind of low rate since, kind of inching up since then a little bit. But
Why is that so? Why did people stop? Let people stop voting after their
it's been a question for a long time. Why did that happen? Was it disfranchisement? Was it because like the South was so? Was it something just happening? It's because of what was happening in the South that there were so many restrictions on voting. Was so solidly Democratic that no one bothered voting. Was a lot, but do we see that same drop off in the North too? Don't know. Just something about that time period. People just kind of lost faith in the electoral process.
You figure that people don't like we vote because people that died for voting. I feel like that sentiment would be bigger because it was sooner.
Especially here at the 1920 election. Wilson kept saying, this is to make the world safe for democracy, this war. But now you have some of the lowest turnout ever. Because suddenly now women have the right to vote, and now they aren't voting yet. I don't know. There's been a lot of studies on it, and no one's been able to really come up with a clear indication why that's happening. Especially in this period before women could vote, that's got this dramatic drop. Rises again here in the 1960s, here with the passage of the Voting Rights Act and so forth, but 72 election, a lot less turnout. 76 election, a lot less turnout. Goes down even further here, 84 and 88. Spikes a little bit here at 92, the Clinton-Bush election. It was even higher here at the 2004-2008 elections, but down again in 2012. A lot of interest, was high turnout in 2020. Um, 1,973.2% turnout. This is from U.S. Census Bureau. Again, that dramatic drop here at about below 50%, 1920-24. It's because they just didn't like the candidates? I don't know. They could be part of it. 66.9% turnout in 2020. Is that going to be the same this year? Don't know. Midterm elections, you see a lot sharp increase here last few years. The election's been so close over a Congress. Midterm election turnout, presidential election turnout don't match up because remember those are different voters. You have people who are far less engaged tend to vote in a presidential election because one thing is right in their faces and everyone knows basically who the president is and what the president does. It's a more prestigious election, but not a lot of people get excited about county surveyor elections or city council elections and midterm years, you don't have a lot of big contests. But from about the 1980s until the next 35 years, midterm election turnout's generally been about 40%, but it jumps up starting 2018 up to almost 50%. Turnout is eligible voting increases, spikes up here at around 1840. It's right here. And this is from up to 2012. I just don't know. So we just can't read the tea leaves on that. Just all I know is that people are voting very large numbers. Is good, but who turns out, who shows up to vote, who does, and who votes? That's going to determine who the president is. Which aren't quite sure what that is yet. Polls are showing a very close election, but those polls could be off. Turn sharply Republican, could turn sharply Democratic when the final votes are all tallied.
If most polls are showing a very close election, how come you keep on saying that?
Because sometimes they are margin of error.
Okay.
Because there's something stirring in the data that just isn't quite adding up. For example, we see polls that may be very consistent for other elections, but may show like very low percentage of younger voters toward Harris, but a very high percentage of older voters toward Harris. I think it should be the opposite. The percentages that normally should be there are just off. And it's not explaining that. Turnout so far very great. A lot more women voting, but is that going to be just early voting phenomena? Is that going to be hold through election day? Don't know. But women are trending very sharply toward Harris. But at least that's what they're telling pollsters. Is that actually going to be the case? Because you got to remember, you look at the numbers, look at who is voting, and the poll is just a snapshot, just from a look at it from a particular angle at a particular time. Could be off. Could be exactly right. We don't know. So that's what it's looking like here. So back to your question, why do people vote? I say older voters, they tend to be the highest percentage of voters. But it's for several reasons. One, it's a learned behavior. Basically, you vote for a few elections, it gets to be kind of habit. So, oh, it's election time, let's go again. And because this is a very democratic activity, you go to the polling site, you get to see your neighbors again, say hello to them, talk for a little bit. Northwood has that wonderful tradition. They basically have that kind of a big community potluck on election day at their precinct. In New Hampshire, there's an old tradition of first in the nation. They have a couple of small little communities who vote right at midnight on election day, and they kind of turned into a big party. So on election day afternoon, you'll be hearing, the results from Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. What did all 12 voters have to say this year? It's just kind of a curiosity, some kind of Always a neat little story on election day. And of course, older voters, they tend to have this sense of civic responsibility and these old ideas.
Old values.
Yeah, older values, kind of a generational thing. So younger generations, it's just been raised more with ideas of every man for himself, me and mine, and to help everyone else.
Yeah. One that you mentioned always the first.
Yeah, there's another one too that goes right at midnight, but it's Dixville Notch and another one. Can't remember the name of it. Because that one name, Dixville, that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, it does.
Um, in presidential elections, women tend to vote at slightly higher rates than men. Example, in the 2016 election, 58% of women turned out to vote, but 54% of men turned out to vote. But this year it tends to be much, much sharper, more women voting. Again, is that something just kind of in our culture, or the opinions men generally have of the candidates, or men just kind of giving up? Right now, most number percentage of college students, more women than men go to college now. More women graduate than men. And more women are voting than men.
Yeah.
Is there something to that, or is it just a blip?
I can name a factor of that if you want to hear about it.
Now, what do you think?
So the way we've come to this is going back to just grade school.
Okay, go ahead.
The way we institutionalize our school systems, you make it to where there's not enough. I don't want to say playtime, but not enough playing around physical activity, which is what most boys, young boys, inclined to do. They were much more, sit in class, do things in class, and a lot of kids are just like, they don't want to sit still. They want to go around playing and walk and stuff. But usually the young girls are more sit down, stay in class, and don't worry about it. It's usually the guys that get kind of pushed to the side.
Yeah, most of the troublemakers in class usually are
Boys.
young boys. Not always, there are exceptions, of course, to say that. But and yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like this is the 1980s, on into fifth grade. Yeah, we'd have a recess, get up, run around, do all sorts of things, come in, sit down, had our fun. Okay, let's get back to work.
Yeah.
But they really don't do that much in schools anymore. I still got two in sixth grade.
Argue that it's a lot more geared towards women in a way, because you're not doing anything that would appeal to you.
That's your way of looking at it.
Down with the intro.
And now you obviously you tell them off for acting a certain way because it's just how they act when they're young. So it's kind of suppressing them, making them not want to learn, making them not interested in school, making them somewhat dumber in a way that they're not inclined to learn.
It's an interesting theory. And there has been some talk about that, some studies kind of done on the importance of recess at school. I remember that you're in school, you're a kid, you're there from like 8 to 3:30. That's basically a job, and that's hard on kids.
Yeah.
Kids need time just to be kids.
Yeah. And then you give them homework on top of that.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed my younger kids especially is teachers are less and less inclined to assign homework, especially the younger teachers.
That's I feel like that's more of a good thing. Just you can section off times of the day where you are scheduled to learn and scheduled
Yeah.
to do other kid things.
Mm-hmm.
Regulates life.
Not true. Conservatives and liberals more likely than moderates to vote. Generally more interested. Basically, people with very strong opinions on one side or the other of the political spectrum, they're more inclined to vote because they see the value of it. They're more passionate about it. There's a metric they call voter enthusiasm. But moderates do vote. That is, the things they feel strongly about. Just they're more middle of the road than everyone else.
I was thinking suspicion moderates feel more strongly about specific subjects than actual candidates.
They call low stimulation elections. Less interest. It is basically there's not a lot of strong candidates one way or another. Not a lot of candidates are really alienating anybody one way or another. No strong issues. That everyone's basically pretty satisfied. And that can be something to do with why there were so few people turning out in elections. From the 1790s to the 1840s, more people were voting in midterm congressional elections because Congress is seen as the more dominant branch of government, more so than the presidency. It's really not until Theodore Roosevelt that the presidency is seen as the dominant branch of the federal government. And how are these candidates decided? Well, I have several ways of doing this. You have the caucus, which is like an election, but what you do is, and Iowa's still very famous for these, a couple other states do these, basically, everyone goes to the polling place at a particular time and basically say candidate A, B, C, or D. You support candidate A, go to one part of the room, candidate B, another part of the room, candidate C, another part of the room, and four, the fourth part. And D, the fourth part. And they kind of see who's they got the most votes there. Then they go to the next step, and the next step to basically decide first, second, third, fourth place. The primary, which is basically like a mini election. But it's an election just within the party. Who is the party nominee going to be? As we saw this year, earlier this year, was the Republicans, the Democrats, they are voting who is their nominee going to be for president. Like a dozen Republicans running for president. Joe Biden's running. They're like two very minor candidates really to get any kind of attention. But how the primary is conducted, that's differently. You have the open primary, you have the closed primary. The different ways candidates do this. Some states, basically, all you do to vote in a primary, you just walk up on election day and they ask you which ballot you want, Democratic or Republican. Sometimes they may actually have like a Libertarian Party primary, even. But open or closed. That's open, basically, whichever one you want. Because in Arkansas and a lot of states in the South, you don't have to register by party. But closed primary, that's basically you are already registered by party. And to change that affiliation, you have to go to the courthouse or fill out a form. And only if you are a registered member of that party can you vote in the Republican or Democratic primary. But you can only vote in one. Only the Democratic or the Republican, not both, just one. Sometimes they have that Louisiana-style primary, also called a jungle primary. Basically, all the parties are running at once in one big election, and top 2, 3, or 4 voters go to the runoff if no one gets 50%. That runoff is generally the general election. And they have that kind of mixed system. Some states is okay if you are a registered member of this party or not registered the other one, like say registered Democrat and registered Independent. You can vote in the Democratic primary. Vote in the Republican primary if you're registered Republican or registered Independent. That's a mixed system. In some of them, you have they go even a little bit further. The runoff system. After this, generally 50%. Sometimes it's who gets the most number of votes, or they have to go to a runoff if it isn't 50% of the vote. And that system, the runoff, sometimes called the second primary, an old-fashioned name for it. Top two go to the runoff, and sometimes in some states the runoff it's only people who voted in the primary, or only people who did not vote in the other party primary. Does any Democrat didn't vote? Say it's a Democratic runoff. The Democrat, some states it's okay only if you voted in the primary, or any Democrat, whether they voted in the first primary, can vote, or any Democrat Independent. That's the runoff system. You have the old convention system. Basically, that's where the party faithful gather at a convention site, usually at the county level, and then they'll go to the district and the state level. But residents of the county level, members of the party will meet at this county convention, and they'll vote. Just people in that room will vote. Nominate, second, and decide who the nominee is going for the party is going to be. Now they start going to the primary caucus system. That seemed kind of elitist. Basically, just a few handful of people in a room are going to vote. Caucus opened up a little bit. Primary opened up way up. Some smaller minor parties, all they do is they have a convention system, or just basically whoever just signs up. And the presidential system, that's still on the conventions. It's primaries, but they go to a final convention, basically, which has been the tradition since 1832, to basically decide who the nominee is going to be. Initially, you just voted for delegates, so the party decided who delegates are going to be. You went to the convention and decided. But since 1968, they've gone primarily to this primary system, where the people vote, and delegates basically sworn to support a particular candidate, they go to the convention and cast the deciding votes. So really, the national nominating conventions you see, like we saw this summer, they're a little more than formalities now. Basically just giant pep rallies for the party faithful. Get to see who these candidates are, where they stand for, and just get the rile up the voters. Candidate qualifications for these offices, it depends. It's different from one area to another. Generally, you have to be a resident of that city or that district. In Arkansas, to be a state representative, you have to be at least 21. State senator, 25. Governor, have to be at least 30. Variations, different states. Most local offices, you have to be at least 18 or maybe 21, depending on your state. These are city, county, and district-wide elections. Basically, as long as you're registered, you're an eligible voter, you can vote. You can run. Congress. The Constitution says to run for Congress, U.S. House, you have to be 25. U.S. Senate, 30. President, 35. Residency requirements. Generally, most of these cases, you have to be resident from that area for at least a year. Qualifications. Well, they're you have the candidate qualifications, then you have the non-qualified. What qualities do they bring to the table? Most candidates for higher offices, they've had experience with something before. Governors, for example, they've usually been elected to something before. State legislature, city council, mayor. Rarely do you have people just jumping in and starting off as running for governor. Local offices, yeah, sometimes somebody running for mayor, city council, that's usually the first election they've ever run in. Same thing with state legislature. But your qualifications in previous offices, that can give you a record to run on. Say, look what I've done, look what I've accomplished. See, I can actually do the job. Sometimes it's a positive thing. Sometimes our opponent takes and say, yeah, look at the job he did. No way you're voting for him. Running for president, the top office in the land. Usually it's good to show you have some kind of managerial experience. Usually government experience, like governors and U.S. senators, they've been most of the presidents elected in the past. Sometimes military experience. They show that you have a steady record, discipline, usually a war hero. Of the major party candidates since 1900, only two nominees for president have had no previous political experience. Wendell Willkie, the Republican nominee in 1940, and Trump. And then the personal qualities. Are you charming? Are you likable? Are you seen as strong and decisive? Are you seen as honest? Seen as a visionary sometimes even. Are you considered to be charismatic? Or go back to the 2000 election, that famous question, who would you rather have a beer with? Issues in the elections, usually the economy is the biggest one. People vote their pocketbooks almost invariably. People who don't vote their pocketbooks, usually it's a single issue or they're feeling comfortable enough with their own finances, they can look at other issues. Social issues, usually single issue votes like abortion or prohibition. I go back even further in history, slavery. Integrity in government and the candidates. Sometimes that's come down to something personal. Stability. People generally want comfort. They want stability. They want things people don't want a revolution. They don't want to fight. Like the one writer wrote today said, people don't get up in the morning and say, I want to start a fight with my neighbor today. People don't do that. Stability is generally something that people vote for. Especially why crime is usually such a big issue. People want stability. Stability, that's a big issue in the 1916 election, all the protests, civil rights, and Vietnam War protests. A lot of people were very tired of that. They wanted stability. Integrity, that was a big issue in the 1976 election. Nixon just resigned a couple of years before. People wanted a break from all of that. So Carter found his opening. But overall, why do people vote? Political efficacy, sense of being able to belonging to part of the process, sense that you voted, you did something. Sense of duty, civic duty. Good citizens vote. Good citizens show up. Tight races, it's very close, this kind of horse racing, that generally tends to increase turnout. Does it always? No, not always. But since that, your one vote's going to make a difference, that does happen. Sometimes it really does make a difference. Every election, there's always one race somewhere decided by one or two votes. Usually local elections, but those local elections may not be exciting. City council versus president, but that city council actually has a lot to do with how you live, your daily life here in this town, in the city you live in. party identification. You want to vote for their team. People want to feel like they're voting for a winner too. They don't like throwing away their vote in a lost cause. Not many people want to take the time and trouble voting for a lost cause. Then, of course, how do you participate in the process? Well, you vote. Contact your representatives. Write letters to the editor. Not just a mean tweet or a mean Facebook post no one's ever going to pay attention to, but letters to the editor, something they're actually going to see in a newspaper. The newspaper's kind of declining. It's not quite as prominent as it used to be. Marches and rallies, boycotts. Above all, contacting representatives. You've got to remember, the biggest thing about this is the election next Tuesday. That's only the beginning of the process. The cycle starts over. You still need to step up and pay attention to what's going on and contact your representatives. Even if they say no, you at least say what you feel. Next Tuesday, we'll see. All right. Keep reading along here, and we'll talk about the press and interest groups next week. All right. See you later.